Okay, folks. So I'm going to turn this over to Mona and let you know some of the things that she's up to right now. It's all yours, Mona.
Well, hello, everyone. I want to thank you for putting me on first because I do have another activity after this. But I won't bore you with all the details of what I do. First, I'd like to say I do a lot of things, but I also do not do a lot of things that I used to do. So my time is well divided, and I do sleep occasionally. But I just love talking to people with polio, and I think that's a passion that I've recently learned. So again, hello everyone. Polio Support International News Breaking News. I've been very busy this summer with support all around the world. I just heard from a British researcher that says there's about 20 million polio survivors globally, and that less than 1% of those people were exposed to the polio epidemic. And there's only a risk of about 15 to 85% of those people who have post-polio. So the numbers are not as great as we really thought, but they are big. And if you're one of those persons who have post-polio, you're 100%. So I hold many monthly support meetings all over the world, as well as my weekly Tuesday evening. As a note, there are many groups which hold monthly meetings all over, and everyone is welcome to all of them. Check in either with me or with Maureen at the Boca Polio Association. She has an amazing list, and you can reach her. You can just click on the on your address and write Boca Polio, and you get right to her. Or you can maybe Maureen, if you put your address in the chat, people can get there, because there are an amazing amount of polio support meetings, and everyone is interesting, and you're going to fit into one of them. You're going to be able to hear things that are necessary for you. So I've never worried about how many people show up to a support meeting, because those who do have many questions, and I try my best to answer them. And it is a great relief to all of them. Anyone who shows up, if we have a meeting and there's one person, then that person gets some special treatment. And if there's 20 people, they all get special treatment. So don't worry. So I have a few groups internationally. India was my first international group. We started in October 2023, and now there are 28 people on the list. But usually we have only 3 to 5 attending. I'm not sure exactly why, but yes, we still remain a small amount, and we do talk to people. There is a wonderful new website by Nina Bandari, and it's called postpolio.in. And that's on the internet. And rather than a support group in her area, she has this wonderful website. It's worth looking at. It has information and great stories. So that's postpolio.in. Africa started last February, and now I have 64 members on my mailing list. Since the difficulty for most people in Africa is the internet usage, we have begun using a combination of WhatsApp and Zoom. First, we start off in WhatsApp and people get together, and then I switch, or some of us stay on WhatsApp and some of us go on Zoom. Sometimes there's an echo, but that's not a problem. We want to talk to the people. At this last meeting, we contacted more than 25 survivors, and this combination seems to work best, and perhaps it will work well in other areas. I'm guessing that India also has that problem, not everywhere, but many places. Mexico will start this late September. There is a group of 14 registered members, and it is a Spanish-speaking group. I will be one of the unilingual English people, but I'm used to that because I'm here in Quebec and I'm the unilingual English person here in French Quebec. Dr. Martha, a polio survivor herself and a speaker for this group, will be leading the meetings. Those are the international groups, and the American and Canadian and English groups, as well as Australia, are all functioning very well. Please check out the lists and go visit them. They're truly worth it. And that ends my late breaking news for the international polio.
Breaking the dun 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 dun. So, and
Thank you
Mona,
all.
you gave the statistic at the beginning, but statistics are not always accurate too, because lots of people unreported are not included in those numbers. So, but much appreciate everything you're doing. I much like the fact that you're adding Spanish to your groups. And I can practice my Spanish there. So, but I know a lot of people that will benefit from that, because that's just not a Mexican group. It's anybody who speaks Spanish.
Yes.
So much appreciate that, Rona. Any questions from Mona? Let me unpin you somehow here, remove pin. Janie, I don't know if you saw her in the chat. They're looking for the link to the Facebook page. If you could.
Thanks, Ken. I just saw that now.
Okay, if you can post it, that would be good.
Sure.
Okay, now we're going from Canada a little bit south.
I think Maureen had a question.
Oh, Maureen, you have a question? I'm sorry.
No, I was going to direct somebody to Maria, who was asking a question about the, you answered it already. About
Okay.
in the chat.
Okay.
Thank you all. I'll see you again soon.
By the way, I will be posting it today and tomorrow, Mona's latest. You have that show on Facebook, on social media every month. I don't know if you mentioned it or not, but the latest version of it is being posted. It's on YouTube now, and I will post it very soon.
Thank you.
Okay.
And real quick, Mona, can I ask, Mona, have you had a chance to connect perhaps now with RI Director Salvador Rizzo Tavares, who is now Zone 25A RI Director, which is the Latin American countries?
I don't think so.
Okay, let's talk later because he'll be at our zone in 2 weeks.
Okay, send me an email, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
Diane, you had your hand up?
Hi, I wanted to share some good news that I was really thrilled. We're talking always about advocacy, and you have to start locally. You have to start maybe just with yourself. And I got a telephone call from my GP, the one that she's a gerontologist. She called me a week ago. And she said, I am getting up a conference of physicians, and most of them are very young fellowship physicians in the Orlando, Florida area. And I was wondering if you would attend and be a speaker and tell your story about your mobility, challenges and how you deal with it. Because she said, and these are her words, not mine. She said, young doctors have to hear from patients like you. And I thought, yeah, that is like great, So I will keep you all posted on how that goes.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Diane. Excellent news. Now we're going to head over to Florida, Tampa Bay. And to Mr. Dick, who has some news on activities that he is doing over there.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate all of you taking time this morning to join us. Advocacy is our middle name. It is what drives us. And as I attended many of the post-polio support groups around the nation and elsewhere, a common thread or theme complaint always came up was that folks couldn't find a doctor or a physical therapist or a physio who had ever seen a polio, knew anything about it, who often dismissed it, et cetera, et cetera. So got to thinking about that. So I pulled together a bunch of folks from around the world, from Polio Australia and Polio Britain and PHI in St. Louis, and we put together what we call the International Post-Polio Education Collaborative. And I'm going to kind of read from what we're doing here so you get a better idea. But our mission is to provide clinicians worldwide an informative internet directory source to advance their clinical education so that they may better recognize and understand the treatment of post-polio conditions, to reduce disparities in post-polio care and clinical risk through innovative educational tools, source networks, and international collaboration. The directory contents contain a broad range of post-polio educational topics and resources a physical therapist can easily access to apply to their training and patients. One of the things we're actively trying to do is provide the physical therapy colleges programs with information that they can give to their students so that when they finish their physical therapy education, they'll know about us. So our key initiatives include fostering international collaboration of regional post-polio organizations like PHI to share their clinical education tools that improve clinician easy access to post-polio care topics by posting the directory on their sites. So each of these major polio organizations around the world have websites, and we'll have a link on there where clinicians and doctors and others can easily access this directory. So today, regional post-polio organizations and clinicians are meeting to produce an easily usable directory containing the compilation of their papers, articles, video links, interviews, etc. So in the coming months, a beta directory will be circulated for clinical comment and suggestions. So, you know, as of last Tuesday, we've got a directory now with some 30 plus sources of information from all these different organizations. And so we're pulling it together into one source, one library, call it a directory or as you will, but it will be available coming soon. So that was kind of the advocacy thing that we all saw. And I didn't have to coerce these people to get involved. They all recognized quickly that this was a market that needed to be filled. And so we're going after it. So that's my story for the morning.
Thank you, Dick, for doing that. You're a good advocate. You saw a need and you stepped forward and you're fulfilling that need with your initiative, basically. So much appreciated. Any questions for Dick?
Is there a way that any of us can help in that effort? Is there something you've sent out that we could share locally to get?
Well, as I say, when we get to the point that we have a product, a directory that we've vetted and gone through, and everybody's on the committee has or whatever, so the collaborative have said, yeah, we're signed off, it's good, you can use our stuff. Then we will send that out to various clinicians and physical therapists, doctors, and folks that we would ask them to review it, test it, see if it works for them, and give us feedback as to what we can do to improve it, etc. So yeah, we'll be calling on you. You can't hide. We know where you are.
Dick, Alex here. I'm curious to know if you wouldn't mind giving us the title that you said in the beginning of your piece, International Post-Polio, and I couldn't write fast enough.
Okay. Well, the initials are IPPEC,
Yeah.
which stands for the International Post-Polio Education Collaborative. We spent an hour trying to figure that out. So,
That's not bad.
but at any rate, it's about education of those who need it for their schools, for their patients, for their practices, whatever. So
I'd love to help if I can be of service. One of the things I'm stepping up to in Rotary District 7630 is the Polio Plus presentations, going around to the various clubs and other speaking opportunities to talk about my polio journey and what Rotary is doing with Polio Plus. So if I can help at all, I'd love to be of service.
put your email address direct to me in the chat and I'll correspond.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Dick. Looking forward to further updates on that. And when you get it, see what I'm doing here. Oh, I just removed Dick from the group. See, that's what I shouldn't be trying to do, two things at one time.
Dear. He's going to be wondering what he said.
I know. Oh my God. And I don't think he can come back in again, too. Oh,
No, he can't. He
I'll
won't
ping
be
him on
able to come
WhatsApp.
back in.
He's gone. So sorry about that, Dick, wherever you are. Oh my God.
Ken, did
I'll
you
ping him a
actually
note.
remove him? Did you actually remove him?
Yeah. I was
Okay,
trying to remove his pin and I hit the wrong remove.
well,
I'll
I
ping him a
learned from my
WhatsApp.
own mistake that when you remove someone, they cannot come back in
Yeah.
on the same device for
Oh.
24 hours. So unless he has something else to come in on.
Oh my
Can he
God.
come in through the Facebook group?
Ken, I'll ping him
He can watch on the
Ken?
Facebook. Yeah.
I'll ping him a WhatsApp to tell him what's happened and to watch on Facebook.
Nothing personal. Oh my God.
Yes.
Okay. So I want to now move over to Angie. Angie, I forget, you're Michigan, Minnesota,
Wisconsin.
Wisconsin. Oh, not even close. Okay.
Just north of, well, no, Michigan's just across the water.
Let me not talk and pin you at the same time because I'll get you out of here too.
Don't. Thank you.
Okay.
Well, yesterday when we did learn about this emergency situation, I thought, well, let's take just a minute to try something.
I am a member. Why will you not let me into the meeting?
Sorry. Okay, everybody can mute at this moment. That would be good. You can unmute eventually. Okay.
Yes. So anyway, for quite a bit of time here, we've been pulling together slowly but surely aims and goals for this this organization. And to what Dick is doing, actually, one of our aims is, to advocate for the establishment of polio assessment centers and clinics for those suffering from the late effects of poliomyelitis in all member states of the World Health Organization. So he's already started on a venture in that regard that will help support some of the things that we want to see accomplished through this group. And in the future, we are going to actually do and roll out some focus groups where we're going to reach out to those of you who've been coming to the various monthly meetings, and something more formalized than what we're going to try and do today. But we want to hear from folks to understand, are we putting our energy and our direction in the right place? There are so many different organizations out there that are already doing different pieces. And I think one of the things that, and those of you who are on the steering committee, and Denise, I know you and I have worked together on our particular goal for an action plan. What I have really heard is that we want to ensure that this group is an advocacy organization and not a support group, because there are so many different support groups. And so it becomes this kind of a bit of a juggling act to make sure that as we address what the needs are as it relates to advocacy, that we don't go down the slippery slope of being a support group, of hearing about, all the woes and the highs and all the things that happen in our daily lives, but more that we address what can we do to change the situation for ourselves and for others, so that they maybe don't have to have those experiences, or at least have them impact them in a negative way. So today we're just gonna ask one simple question. Have it here. Let me see if I can put it over in the chat. So you should be seeing this question now. And it's, when you think about all of the organizations doing advocacy, what do you feel is missing that will help you? And so when you think about the groups that you've been a part of or you've heard of, they're actually advocating for more awareness, more doctors, more physios, more government support. When you think about all those organizations, or if you don't know of any, what do you feel personally is missing that this organization should try to address in some way? And we'll end up eventually taking that and saying, okay, these are, quick, small wins that we can try to accomplish quickly and easily. And there are other ones that are going to take years to develop and see some success. So we have a small group. So originally I was going to think about some small groups breaking out, but since we don't have a whole, I think 19 or 20 actually who can interface with us, I'm going to ask if you see on your screen over on the right hand side, you see 3 little dots and more. Can you all raise your hand if you see those on your screen? Bottom, it should be bottom right in most cases, I think. And if you were to click on that, Janie just did. And Janie, you're good at educating people on this. There's a button that you click, and reactions is the line that you would hit. And then you'll see there's a clapping, there's hand up. It says raise hand. That's the biggest one at the bottom of that little box. You can also put in a thumbs up. You can, at any time, thumbs up. You can have, laughing, crying, or a wow, or you love it, or you want to celebrate. But that is the reactions box. So could everybody right now, and I know 2 of you did it, but could all of you hit the raise hand button so that I know you know where to find that? Getting there. Good job, everybody. We're looking for Diane and Nancy and Alita and Alex and Daryl and Barbara. Can you raise your hand by clicking on that button? Diane, good job. Yay,
I'm sorry.
Nan.
I don't see that option. I see the 3 dots.
Okay, click on the 3 dots, and then
I
you're gonna
did.
get a little box with some chat, and some at the bottom it says reactions.
It doesn't say reactions on mine. It says record, notes, whiteboards, reset to default.
Angela, it's Janie here. I think you've got a versioning problem. So
Ah,
I
thank you.
relate to what Alex has said. And in my case, there is a heart-shaped icon on the bottom of the Zoom menu with the word react.
Okay, thank you, Janie. Yeah, it is a version difference then.
Oh, I see that now. Yes.
Okay, so those of you who have the heart shape react, you'll find your raise hand there.
Ta-da!
Yes, yay. Thank you for saying something about that not being the same. Okay,
Mine
so
was
now,
like that.
yes, I see several of you probably were like that. So now can you lower your hand by doing the same thing, and that box will now say lower hand so that we can clear the board. Okay, so if you run into a real problem that you just can't get that to work, then sit there with your hand raised. But that should be a function that we can use, and it automatically, as I've been told, puts you in the order that you click in to raise your hand. So I guess the first thing, and this will just have you raise your hand so we can see on the screen. How many of you have been involved in some kind of advocacy training in the past, whether it be about, political, putting a bill through, advocating for the street reconstruction in front of your house? How many of you have had some advocacy training, regardless of what the advocacy was about? Anybody else? Okay, so now those of you who raised your hand on the computer, please lower that. How many of you have at some point in time thought, I wish I knew how to go to the people in power to make a difference? Just, you can raise hand physically or on the screen. Again, how many of you have thought or wished you knew how to go to the people in power or the powers to try and advocate for a change? Okay. Can lower hands again. So that being the case, when you think about all the organizations doing advocacy, what do you feel is missing that will help you? What is missing that would help you become a better advocate? What don't you have now, or have you not had available? And I'm seeing Ruth has her hand up. And Ruth, if you can unmute your microphone and tell us what you think has been missing.
Ruth is gone. Oh, now Ruth just came back, so.
Oh, she had never lowered her hand? I missed that.
I didn't lower it.
Okay, never mind then. Think about it though. Okay, Alex, go ahead. What's missing?
I need education, not only on how to approach people in positions that can help, but in understanding the process of the polio virus, how it infects and affects the human body, the different way that people deal with it. I know how I do, and I have surmised the course of action from infection through my 70 years of dealing with being a survivor, but that's my story. I don't know how it affects the general person that's been infected. I think it would be helpful for me to be able to speak generally as well as specifically for my own self.
So it would be helpful for you to have more information so that you would feel better informed when you go out to speak to groups or to your neighbors or whomever about post-polio, if you better understood the disease, how it affects different people. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Yeah, for instance, it's just been recently through my own research that I have found that polio actually damages nerve connections. I didn't realize that before. I knew that there was an interruption in transmission of signals from the brain to the various muscles and bones parts of the body, but I didn't understand that it actually damaged nerve connections, and the body regrows many of those connections in order to allow the muscle or the bone to resume doing what it was supposed to do. In my case, I was 18 months old when I contracted polio, so I needed to continue to grow.
Right. And I don't want to use the time today to talk about our stories. We all have them. I don't. I have people I knew, but I'm lucky. I was one of the people who got the sugar cube. So, but instead of telling our stories today, I really appreciate that you're saying that for you to become a better advocate, you need to better understand more about the disease itself, how it affects people, the same and differently, and so that you can better inform other people. Thank you. Denise, you have to unmute yourself.
Yeah, there.
There you go.
Well, it was, I guess, just last year when I got involved with the advocacy group, and I was very excited. I wanted to just jump in with both feet and hands too. But in the fall, I believe it's October when it's polio month. And I thought, oh, I'm going to contact somebody from Rotary. There must be, I live in a small town, like less than 2,000 people. And I thought, I'm going to contact the Rotary and see, are you guys doing anything? I had such a time finding a listing for the Rotary, anybody in Rotary, because, you don't know. It's to me, it was like very, I don't know what the word is, not specific, but I was quite surprised that it was so hard to find. I looked on the internet and I finally did find the address for somebody, their email contact number. But then when I did contact them, I said, did you know that October was polio month? And no, they had no idea. And I thought, wow, I thought everybody knew about that, especially Rotary. But anyhow, I know now that there's more stuff out there on Facebook and that, but yes, just even last October, well, it actually was before October, because I thought I was ready to volunteer and go sit in front of the grocery store and give out pamphlets and everything. It's like, oh, I was so disappointed.
Well, Denise, to that, I know Ken, Alex, Janie, there are many of us that are Rotarians, but Janie and I are actually what are called End Polio Now coordinators. There are a number of them throughout the world. We will, at least, Janie and I can chat, but we can get back to you. But you've brought up a very good point, that if you were having trouble finding that on the RI websites or anywhere, then we need to do a better job of it, especially since ending polio is our #1 project that we keep working on. So good points, and definitely then can also find ways to bring you into it and find a club, or at least the district, to be able to help brainstorm and look at ways for the World Polio Day. And I see we have a reaction, a thumb up from Janie. So thank you for sharing that with us.
Okay.
All right. And let's
Thanks.
go to Florence. Florence, when you think about advocacy and what's missing, what would help you?
Well, when I think about advocacy, that's such a broad term. There's architectural, there's medical, there's emotional, and I think it needs to really be filtered through. And just yesterday, I was at the doctor. Man thought I'm the greatest thing since Santa Claus was invented. Why? Because I'm able to talk, think, and interact, sitting in a wheelchair. And that's so basic. Then you come to architectural. One step is too much. You know, there used to be a campaign in New York City, the One Step campaign, where the organization went around to all the stores and made them ramp the stores so that we could get in. And that's just my opinion. It needs to be delineated and thought through, and then different committees need to be formed with, that's their focus, and do something.
And I think we are in agreement with you from a perspective of we have different aims at this point that address advocacy, but in different kinds of arenas, not silos, but things that interface and interact with one another, including, you know, physical barriers, as well as communication barriers, finding resources, and as Dick is doing, finding those physios and doctors, and really recognizing that we need to help them understand the differences in what they see and what post-polio's needs are. So I think that's a very good point, and we will make sure that that stays in the forefront of everything that we do. Anybody else? Can I see a raising of the hands? If we were to develop kind of a generic, it'd be probably first to begin with a generic training on how to advocate at a local level. How many of you would be interested in attending something like that via Zoom? Okay, so quite a few of you. And how many of you feel that the reason advocacy is challenging is because you don't know who to go to? Raise your hand if that's the challenge, not knowing where to go. Okay. Raise your hand, take those hands down. Raise your hand if the challenge of advocacy for you anyway is that you just feel so uncomfortable with the whole idea that it's hard to get started. Okay, you can lower hands. How many of you feel that the reason you're not engaged more in advocacy is much like what Alex was saying, that you don't feel like you know enough to go and encounter the questions that might be raised? Okay, only a few of you. Okay. I think that I saw Maria, you had your hand up earlier. You can unmute. Maria? Yes. Whoops, we're not hearing you. Can you see Ken? Is she muted? And if she is, could you unmute her?
No, she's not muted. My guess is the microphone somehow is not connected.
Oh, the microphone function.
You may want to go into your audio setting, but she knows how to do that. And
very, very quickly, I don't want to go through a whole lesson, but take a look at your bottom left-hand side where you've got the microphone. There's going to be a little arrow that points up. If you want to click on that, that'll give you some potential options for selecting a microphone for your computer.
Yeah, just pick
and
one.
We'll let you try to figure that out while we move to Carla. Is that okay? Carla.
I think one of the hardest things to do is self-advocacy with medical people. And there's a fine line between presenting yourself as someone who knows what they're talking about and having the doctors pay attention and believe you, and the line between being totally pissed off that they can't listen. And I think that's a real challenge. Had great opportunities to practice that on Tuesday. And I'm going to have to do more.
So what this group potentially could do, and tell me if I'm kind of hitting the mark or I'm totally off, is to help people, one, feel empowered to speak their truth and what they know for themselves, while not feeling like it needs to move into a confrontational type of conversation. But how do you have those conversations where you are having to almost act as the educator to someone who probably doesn't want to feel like they need to be educated?
Bingo.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah, that's a tough one, because I know that there's a beautiful article that was, why do doctors always see horses instead of zebras? And I think it addresses part of what you're saying, and that is one of the things that we have set in our aims that we want to try and find ways to address. And much of what Dick is doing is to try and help do that too, because we understand that probably one of the best ways we can have doctors start to be better aware and better educated about polios is to actually have other doctors talk to them.
Yeah, it's very easy to offend some doctors
all over again.
and very hard to not blow it.
Okay, Carla, thanks for sharing that.
Uh,
And yes, Ken?
I was just going to say that's a big thing with me, because doctors oftentimes feel that they're superior. I think that's my opinion. It's a big thing that if we allow them to be there, feel superior, they're going to reinforce that they are. So people in authority are not superior to any of us, and we have to make sure they understand that.
Yeah, but I do understand, Carla, what you're saying from the standpoint too, that I know a generation removed from me, at least, my dad for sure, revered doctors and didn't feel that questions should be asked or pushed back. And you know, when his doctor said to me, you know, if you're going to ask so many questions, maybe you should get a different doctor for your parents. And then threatened, you know, that there are very few that would take Medicare patients. There is that intimidation factor. There is that feeling that, you know, especially in a small town with not a lot of doctors, you start to then worry, how far do I push this? But
Yeah, it does.
okay.
There is some ageism in there.
Yeah, and how people have been raised to respect doctors. But Ken, I agree with you that everybody should be able to advocate for themselves. And we know study-wise that when you have someone that can advocate for you, yourself, or others medically, you have much better outcomes.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not just doctors, it's politicians, it's ministers, anybody in that position.
Yeah. Florence, you had something else?
Yes, in my opinion, the ideal situation would be to present a speech at the Doctors Continuing Ed series. I know they all have to do continuing ed. And until they understand from their point of view what post-polio does and how it affects every part of us, we're going to get nowhere. And that only can be done doctor to doctor. Anybody else coming in, you're seen as below them. That's their problem. I don't want to get involved in that. They want to deal doctor to doctor, fine. but just get the information to them. I don't think they'll take time to read. They don't have time. But if they're continuing ed, they have to be there. And I just think that would be a great way to get the information out.
And the challenge that we're going to be, that we find in that is knowing how to intersect with the people who are setting those up, creating the curriculum, and then being able to get that airtime so that that can happen. So agree with you. I think everybody on our committee agrees with you, and we're working on that. I know Dick is proactively working on that with his group. And now what we need to do is continue to look for the ways that we can actually do that, make that happen. So, and any of you that have ideas or connections, because sometimes it's just the right connections too. Anyone else? Dick, is that you back again? No.
Yeah, no,
Someone
Dick's
else.
here. Dick's here. He's on his phone.
He is here. Okay, okay, very good. Okay. Okay, so I just really want to wrap up what we have talked about in this short period of time. And again, we'll be doing a little bit more elaborate and longer focus groups in the next few months, where we will reach out to some to the folks who've been coming and attending, so that we can do a little bit more in expanding our vision and the way that we can address some of the goals and aims that we've set up as an organization. And anytime you have something that you want to get to us about that, I know Ken and Ina, any of us on the committee are more than happy to work with you and hear what you've got to say. What we really do want to emphasize is that we realize that people also, I think it was Florence that said, you know, there's that emotional side of things as well. And we recognize that. We also recognize that they're the support groups that probably can do more for that piece of it. We really want to focus on advocacy and making a difference as much as we can today, especially into the future. So, Ken, I'll turn it back to you.
Before
Angie, could I mention something?
Diane, sure.
We've often talked about, we really need a high profile spokesperson such as Michael J. Fox for Parkinson's. If we could possibly get somebody who people would really listen to, that would very much help us. But we haven't found that person.
So everybody look through your Rolodex. Who are you related to that knows somebody?
Know
So
somebody.
So Diane,
Post-polio.
we're not high profile enough.
No, I'm afraid not. What about Joni Mitchell is from my province?
Joni Mitchell would be great.
Joni Mitchell would be great.
Yeah,
I will work on that. I know a fellow that used to date her, so maybe I can get somewhere.
Only if the breakup was a good breakup.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, Joni Mitchell.
Angela, can I say something before we
Is that Florence? Yeah,
yes.
Florence.
Okay. What I hear you wanting to do is to focus on advocacy. However, until we ourselves deal with our emotional pain from having had polio, what we went through, what we're experiencing, you're going to have a support group amongst the advocacy group. You cannot go out and talk intelligently until you deal with what you're feeling. You got to.
I 100% agree with you that you've got to get to a place of comfort. You have to be able to tell your story so that people will listen. You have to deal with that pain so that you have the courage to even be an advocate.
Absolutely.
I don't disagree. I think the challenge is, and it is a challenge, how do we ensure that the time utilized within this group really is focused on steps towards advocacy for the change, even about having enough support to deal with the emotional side, much like much like mental illness is coming into the forefront of everyone's conversations, you know, how do we help that become something that is more normalized as opposed to exceptional? Does that make sense?
Yeah, before, I think it was Ken that was talking about what he just learned about the nerves.
Alex?
Somebody said that before.
Yeah, Alex did.
That's very interesting. After having polio, how many years? Just found that out? And how did that make him feel? And what did it change within him? You know, it's so important. I can't stress that enough. The emotional aspect to everything in life is uppermost. This was a debilitating disease. And what I'm going through now is worse than the original. And it needs to be, you know, I go to a doctor, I fall apart as soon as I start talking.
Yeah.
And it's like, whoa, I'm getting nowhere here. You know, I'm maybe this hour could be broken up into segments. So you allow a certain amount of time for talking, for each other.
Do you have a good support group that you also go to?
No, I have up in Boca with Maureen.
Yeah.
But that's an hour from me. And it's not good for my time schedule with the home attendants. I could do it by Skype. But again, the home attendant comes, I gotta do personal stuff with her. So no. And
So
that's
let me,
a problem.
in an effort to just kind of keep moving today, though, Ken and others, let's make a note that maybe there's a way that there's a separate meeting time, something where people can talk about how do you find support groups and what's out there, because the challenge becomes one of, yes, agree with you, the emotional. I don't have post polio, but I have lupus, and when I was told I'd die in 10 years. So I know how important that is, but I know it's also important for us to spend time addressing what we can do to make changes so that you get more of the services and more of the attention and more of the accurate methodologies and therapies that help us all move forward. So I hear what you're saying, but I think Mona and others have those support groups, and that's where we want to help steer people to get that emotional support. But maybe there is a way that we can address that separately while not losing the focus on advocacy. So I appreciate that. Carla, real quick.
Which one's part of the advocacy? Yeah, the mind just went blank. I think that Rotary is needing to hear us out better as survivors. Because yes, Marcy points out in the chat that Rotary is still focused on stopping polio. But if we want Rotary to help us, get where we need to go and see that we have tremendous needs as a result of having polio, we need Rotary to agree that post-polio is an issue.
And I can address that from the standpoint that I have had these conversations with people on the RI board of directors, and Mike McGovern, who is one of our strong advocates. I'll be seeing Carol Pandick in a couple weeks, and we'll be talking to her as well. And many of us agree with you. However, right now, the focus, they just really are committed to addressing, ending it, stopping it. But as I shared with the steering committee yesterday, I think that was, I think there's a way that we can use all of your stories to help motivate those, especially who don't even understand what polio is, to get behind, let's end this, but recognize that in ending it, there's still going to be people in 30, 40, and 50 years that will have repercussions. So I agree with you, Carla. And I think we're getting there. We're getting there. We're hearing it. And many, many, many post-polios are being asked to come and speak to Rotary clubs and speak to regional and Polio Now coordinator meetings. So it's moving in that direction. I think it can go even further. And I think with the convention coming up in Calgary this next year, unfortunately, people can come and they can put in an RFP to do a workshop or a breakout session, but there are no expenses paid. So that's the challenge. But it would be great if we could have a breakout session to help people better understand how they can tell the story, keep people motivated to help end polio, but then what next? The what next has to be addressed.
Yeah, it's, you know, the local Rotaries where I live, one had a tiny bit of interest in hearing from a person who'd had polio, and the other two were totally disinterested. But I think it needs to come from the top, that they need to be looking at both sides of the picture. I said to a friend who's a Rotarian, you know, that there are some people who have some needs. And she said, well, we can't be bothering with that because we only can, you know, raise money for the immunization and prevention thing. And I went,
yeah,
screw it. I didn't want to argue with her.
And Carla, maybe we can talk offline at some point and maybe pull Janie into that as well as an End Polio Now coordinator, because we could actually probably help that club see where understanding it has helped them even in their fund development for ending polio. But I would be the first to say to you, they probably are not going to be interested in hearing what the needs might be. They're just not going to be
totally not interested.
Yeah, most of them won't be, because right now it's focused on ending it.
And my dad was Rotarian, so I didn't think that I needed to be one, but maybe I have to force my way into one of the groups.
We want you, we need you.
Yes, I've always told people, you can't change something if you're not in it. You've got to be in it to help make the change.
Yeah.
Ken, I want to turn it back to you, but I see another hand up over there, so I'll let you go with this.
Alida has her hand up. I don't know if you have a brief comment. Kind of past the hour at this point, but Alida, do you have a comment?
You're muted.
You're muted, Alida.
Okay, I was going to say, do you have a list of the reasons of the health problems we have? I mean, have you addressed that?
Mona has that. Mona is good at that. She has all that stuff. She
Yeah,
also has a list of the support groups too.
Well, I know that, and I've got lots of support, but the thing is that you hear a huge amount, but like Alex said, the body changes and you have a different way of coping after you have polio. I mean, with me, I have attacks that actually take away all the use of every part of my body. It lowers my, have to build up my energy again year after year. And I've done that for years, but gardening has brought me back. But what I'm saying is they say I control my blood pressure. None of the medications worked. And my whole body works differently than others. But as soon as they find out something different, the specialists get angry with you and they don't report their findings. And that unfortunately is leaving everybody out. And most of the people who have been tested have actually died by now. I mean, I'm from the group that had polio from, just from the old-fashioned way. So, like with Dr. Sock, hey, that was.
Angie.
Sorry, I gotta go. Okay.
So, I mean,
Appreciate
that's
that.
what part of the work we're doing as advocates to try to do that. You kind of wonder, I like the way Mona approaches it. I think she calls post-polio syndrome the new polio or something like that. And that gets people to think that, people who had polio are still suffering from it. And so that's what we can do as advocates. I kind of wonder, as I was listening to you all, in case in Rotary, maybe they don't get it. Maybe they don't understand what post-polio syndrome is, or even understand that it, or accept the fact that it exists. But we're going to continue working on it. That's what advocates do. We have to be less tireless than the people we're trying to change. So that's the important part of it. I know as a head of a disability group globally, I get tired, but I always come back and think of the end goal. What are we trying to do? And that brings me back. So we got to think of the end goal of what we're doing. And keep in mind, too, most of us here are from North America, but there are people in other countries, in Asia and in Africa in particular, that are very young and have polio. So we need to educate them too on how to take care of themselves. So when they get older, they will know how to deal with the post-polio syndrome. Much appreciate you all being here. So sorry, Dick, that I kicked you out. It wasn't personal. It wasn't personal. It was my ADHD brain. And I think the next subject, we haven't finalized it yet. Next month, we're going to talk about stigma. I think we've all dealt with stigma in one way or the other, particularly people with disabilities, the people who view us as maybe being lesser people because we have a disability. And stigma is going to be around forever. But the thing we need to focus on is how we personally dealing with stigma, and how we make sure that we don't let it bring us down. Also, on this Monday, my Rotary Club is Mona and a number of other people with polio or polio survivors going to talk in general about polio. It may not be at the level of this group, but we're trying to bring awareness to what polio was and what it is today. So that's going to be an education, hopefully, of people. We're trying to reach out to people who basically don't know much about it. So that I'll be posting stuff on that. Much appreciate all your feedback here. All very good comments. That we're going to continue this kind of conversation. So we can. I think it unifies us more as a group. That we all are working together as advocates, working independently, and working together as advocates. So much appreciated.